Nick Haynes has left the Giants and gone to GWS 2.0. Okay, it's not as consistent as it used to be, but there was a period of time there that if a player didn't work out or wanted to leave the Giants, they just head down a little south and go to Carlton. And that's exactly what Nick Haynes has done. To be fair, it really was only when Sauce was in control of the Carlton list. So come on, St Kilda, you know what you need to do. But we're here on this episode to talk about Nick Haynes. What does it mean for his departure from the Giants? What could this be for the Carlton Football Club? And does Nick have any fantasy relevance for us in 2025 and beyond? Nick's a foundational GWS player, and there's been periods of time throughout his AFL career that he's been viewed as one of the leading intercept markers and key intercept possession players in the game. At his best, he's got this beautiful aerial ability to peel off and to spoil, to intercept with clean hands. And then with some relative solid consistency, he's able to then set up and get the ball to the run and carry halfback playmakers and really help set his teammates up for success as they push the ball up the ground. Unfortunately for Nick, injuries have made it a little bit hard for him to crack into the GWS side over the past few years, in addition to a bunch of different guys really stepping up. And Sam Taylor has built this beautiful wall of teammates to stand alongside him. Connor Iden has filled the gap. Even you've got Aaliyah, who can't crack into this GWS team, who also is a really strong intercept and key position prospect, albeit at the other end of his career in terms of experience and games played to Nick. But there was just no space for Nick to get in. It required one of two things. One, injuries. And a Himmelberg, who's gone back over the past couple of years, has made it even harder to get opportunities. So it's required injuries to come for Haynes to get into the side. And when he has, he's only played a couple of games before his own body has let himself down. Or what we've seen at times throughout the past 18 months is the Giants push him up and play him through the wing, and never really had him playing his best football through there. And so while we've seen some decent moments from Nick over the past couple of years, it's been a while now since we've seen him at his best. And I think the Giants politely are pretty happy to see him go. He's on a pretty significant contract. And when you've got players like Aaliyah waiting in the wings for opportunities, it's just one more bit of salary cap space they can reapply to someone else, as well as really give Aaliyah that first crack and first emergency space should any key position prospects or tall options in that back line break down. So I think that's good for the longevity of the Giants. And of course, this has created the opportunity for where now Haynes is playing at the Carlton Football Club. Carlton are really set in a couple of areas of their defensive line. They love the ball use of Newman. They love the run and carry of Sard and Jacob Wiedering. Well, an all-Australian caliber year. But then there's some plug-and-play capacities to how it is. Mitch McGovern's probably the other stable option, but they've tried a number of different guys through this back line to play tall. Kemp, Young, Marchbank, who's now no longer at the club, have all taken this kind of second tall or versatile tall spot. And it's never really quite landed. I thought Kemp was heading towards it, but just as the season went on, Young took some opportunities, and clearly with the pursuit of Nick Haynes, they feel like they need some bolstering of some intercepting and key position prospects, which Nick adds to them. So for the Giants, I think this is a great move, frees up some salary cap space and gives Aaliyah a first crack, where for Carlton, this is a continued move of going all in on this list. They're clearly believing that they have got the core elements in a lot of areas, and I think frankly they do. But definitely that defensive tall positioning to support Wiedering a little bit more, to allow guys like McGovern to be that freedom interceptor, to allow Newman and Saad to be aggressive and attacking with the way they move the ball. A player like a Haynes who can lock down, while it's not his strength, number one spot, he's a very, very good defender in that spot. I think they're pretty happy with this inclusion to their side. And I think it'll be helpful for Wiedering, and I think it should enable other movements, should he be able to get on top of some of those recent injury issues that he's seen. What does it mean for us in fantasy? Well, he's never had a season ever, even when he had that key intercepting and distribution roll-off half-back before. Himmelberg sat back there. He'd never had a season in AFL Fantasy and still hasn't, where he's averaged over 80. While in SuperCoach, you look between the seasons of 2016 and 2020, well, he's going at 84 plus, including a personal best seasonal average of 98. So SuperCoach is more his game than AFL Fantasy. And coming off a SuperCoach average of, let's just call it a 70, there is a little bit of upside there if you believe that he's got that intercepting spot. Now, that GWS side, in terms of the amount of ball that played through him, is very, very different to this Carlton side that has Newman and Saad, and to a lesser extent, McGovern, taking some of these opportunities. So for me, I'm not sold that this is going to be an absolute monster play for Carlton, and it's going to turn into a great SuperCoach or AFL fantasy output for us. So for Classic, probably not really that keen on it. I'll monitor it. We'll see what else comes and changes through this Carlton side. Does a Dan Houston, for example, pop in? If it does, well, that changes everything and he's even further down the list. But at time of this podcast getting released, I'm just not so sure that he's the right guy for me. So Haynes, I'm sorry, but in Classic, I'm not interested at all. Draft, I've got a little bit of interest, especially late on draft day. I think if he does get the position to be that more interceptor, then we could probably see an 80s average of relative comfort in SuperCoach, which could be a handy depth option. While in fantasy, even if he has that plum role, I just don't see the volume of scoring that can come through there with Saad and Newman still getting so much of the pill. SuperCoach, he gets that score weighting that comes through intercept possessions and intercept marks. So I think that's what's going to help him. So Classic, no interest. Draft, late, yes, in SuperCoach, but fantasy, look, maybe on the right opponent, I might consider him as a plug and play. But outside of that, I got no interest. But what's your take on Nick Haynes and what this means for Carlton and for the Giants? You can let us know across social media. All the links to get in touch with us across social media are in the description of this episode. And if you're enjoying our coverage of all of the players that are moving clubs this trade and free agency period, make sure you follow us across not only socials, but wherever you're getting this episode, make sure you have subscribed and followed so that as soon as a new episode drops, you're notified straight away. We can't wait to be back with you chatting about another player that has moved clubs this 2024 free agency and AFL trade period.